Welcome everyone. Today we're going to get a tour of a financial investigation that encompasses a wide array of tools including financial data analysis, surveillance, undercover work, seizures, forfeitures, and just good old-fashioned police investigation. It's an excellent example of the work that must go into a probable cause affidavit. We're going to walk through this affidavit, not in each and every paragraph, but we are going to go through many of the highlights. If you're interested in reading the entire affidavit, please let me know, and I'm happy to provide it to you. If you have any questions, comments, or thoughts, please post them to the discussion board. Let's begin. So remember that the trend of recent Supreme Court decisions has been to give greater priority to the use of search warrants as the proper way of making a lawful search. It's really a cardinal rule that seizing goods and articles, money, and even people, law enforcement agents must secure and use warrants wherever reasonably practicable. This rule rests upon the desirability of having judges and magistrates rather than police officers who can determine when searches and seizures are permissible and what limitations that should be placed on them. In one case, the dimensions of search and seizure notes that it's important to uphold the Fourth Amendment. And today we will talk briefly about the Fourth Amendment and the probable cause requirements. We'll also look at the test for probable cause and then demonstrate 5 ways to potentially establish that probable cause. This is an illegal gambling operation. It's a search and seizure warrant, and we'll walk through some of the main components of the probable cause affidavit. The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution prevents the government from unauthorized intrusion into places where a reasonable expectation of privacy resides. Things like homes, places of business, telephones, and even persons. The Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, Rule 41, governs probable cause and the authorizing of search and seizure warrants. It states that persons or property subject to a search and seizure, a warrant can be issued on the basis of probable cause for any of the following: evidence of a crime, contraband, fruits of a crime, or other illegally possessed items, or property that was designed for use, intended for use, or actually used in the commission of a crime. And of course, a person to be arrested or unlawfully retained. The Fourth Amendment was designed to prevent government agents from bursting into homes and other places without any reason and without a warrant from an independent judicial magistrate. It's one of the most important freedoms we have, and it can be traced directly back to the British occupation of the American colonies in the 1700s. A probable cause finding by the magistrate judges are those facts that lead someone to believe that contraband or evidence exists and is likely to be found, or the item may be seized for evidence or for forfeiture, or that a person accused of committing a crime can be arrested. Probable cause is developed by conducting a thorough and intensive investigation. Since it's based on a likelihood versus a reasonable belief or even a certainty, a collection of facts that must establish probable cause are based on 3 primary things. First, that a crime has occurred. Second, that a person or place is connected to the crime in some way. And third, that the evidence or asset to be seized is likely to be found at that place to be searched. In developing probable cause, you need to establish 3 things. 1. Know the elements of the statute issue. include facts to support those elements in the body of the affidavit. Evidence of a crime exists and is likely to be found during that search. For example, business records will contain evidence of fraud. Based on interviews of employees and witnesses, they stated that the records are kept in the regular course of business at the company's headquarters. Evidence of the crime is currently located at the location you want to search. That's how you make probable cause. So there are 5 general ways that probable cause can be established, but this isn't exactly all of them. It can be established in a variety of ways, some of which we'll see later on in this presentation. Many are case-specific. They can be elicited through interviews, documents, emails, financial analysis, and many other items. It can also include hearsay. Ultimately, probable cause is about facts. Facts make probable cause. Probable cause must be based on specific, articulable facts and circumstances. Probable cause cannot be based on mere suspicion or an educated guess. Unfounded conclusions, that is, conclusions that are not supported by any evidence, can't be used to establish probable cause. Any facts and circumstances which are logically relevant can be used to establish probable cause, including inferences. Including as much detail as practicable when stating probable cause is a great way to ensure that you meet the burden. Logical inferences can be drawn by an individual investigator based on his or her expertise, training, or experience, and this can be used to establish probable cause. One very important limitation on the use of professional inferences to establish probable cause: you must be able to articulate the expertise and training and experience on which you base this inference. This is really experientially based. Knowing the prior cases, knowing the general motives and methodologies of criminal activity, this is very important. So today we're going to walk through the affidavit in support of a search and seizure warrant filed on January 23, 2009 in the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland in Baltimore. The affidavit was actually included in a civil asset forfeiture complaint filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office seeking to seize and forfeit 17 properties in Baltimore County, as well as the contents of 14 bank accounts at a Bank of America that were all in the name of Nick's Amusements and related companies. The defendant properties were purchased with proceeds of an illegal gambling business that was conducted in violation of Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 1955, and is subject to the seizure and forfeiture to the government. This is a good example of a complex affidavit that includes an overview or summary paragraph that's useful as a guide to the magistrate judge. As we go forward in reviewing this affidavit, you'll see that the facts go to support the conclusion of probable cause. So first of all, a search warrant application must establish a tie or connection, what legal experts call a nexus, between the evidence sought and the location to be searched. The affidavit must provide enough facts, but not necessarily every fact, that supports a finding of probable cause that a piece of evidence or asset is located at the location to be searched or seized and is more likely than not to be tied to the criminal activity. The information must be particularly described, meaning that it should be as detailed, specific, and technically accurate as possible. In this case, the address of 18 Brett Manor Court in Cockeysville was the residence of John Zorzit, who owns the companies under investigation. Also in this example, The bank account number is sufficient here, as it is owned or controlled by the person. Evidence that can be seized includes the proceeds or fruits of crimes. It also includes property designed for the use, intended use, or actual use in the commission of a crime. Cash proceeds are those revenues derived from criminal activity, in this case, the illegal gambling proceeds. Tracing these proceeds are a vital part of any investigation because you want to show where those funds originated, where they went, and what they were used for. In this case, the cash from the illegal gambling business was tied and used to purchase other properties. This enabled the targets to further their scheme and allowed them to conceal their illicit activities. This is called the I love me paragraph. Of course, that's being facetious. But this is an important setup for the rest of the affidavit. In this paragraph or paragraphs, you want to give the magistrate a sense of your training, experience, and investigative background. This can include things such as your current position, length of service, and participation in other investigations. Training, education, certifications are also very important, as well as sources of knowledge regarding conspiracy, fraud, financial crimes, cyber crimes, money laundering, etc. This is an overview of the statutory authorities at issue in this case. Some jurisdictions will want a full text of the applicable laws, while others will simply accept a summary of the law. This allows the magistrate to quickly review the statutes while reading the affidavit. It's also important because eventually the warrant will be made public, or at least given to the defendant, and the idea is to ensure that the government simply cannot just search a place because they want to. They must have probable cause that a law was violated or likely violated, and the place to be searched contained or was likely to contain evidence of that specific crime. Investigations have to start somewhere, and it's helpful to show the magistrate where, why, and when the investigation began. Predication is the factual basis, sometimes called the reasonable grounds, to begin to conduct an investigation or examination. Once some indication of fraud or financial crime reveals itself, either through an audit, a tip, a red flag, a news article, the investigator or examiner begins their review and starts to form a theory of the investigation, which they'll continue to test. In this case, the predication came when Baltimore County Police began receiving citizen complaints about illegal gambling and started their investigation. The Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division joined the case when it became clear that this was a large, complex, and very unique investigation that involved much more than just simple payouts from a few slot machines. Because of the sophisticated operation and the requisite financial investigation, the IRS brought many resources to the table, as we'll see shortly. Dates are very important. They tie everything together and show the chronology. In this case, the initial time from the undercover purchase to the search and seizure of the two slot machines was 21 days. It was long enough to write the report, document any additional information that was needed, and prepare for a search warrant. Paragraph 10 describes how the main target, Nick's Amusements, was tied to this establishment. This is the nexus that is required for a search or seizure warrant. Since Zorzit owns Nick's Amusements, it's important to show that he also signed the application for the county's amusement device licenses. Interviews of subjects, victims, witnesses, and others with information is a critical component in any probable cause warrant. When the persons are identified fully, that gives further credibility to their story, unlike anonymous tipsters. In this paragraph, it helps to establish a number of important points. First, the subject tells us about his length of service, which is over a long period of time. He names the owner of both companies. He discusses the practices and procedures for removing the cash from the machines and where he eventually deposits it. By repeating the 8100 Harford Road address, the subject is showing the judge, through the investigators, how he has firsthand knowledge of the location of the cash. This is one of the locations that the investigators are seeking this warrant for. Notice the detail in which investigators were able to show multiple employees able to clear the machine and pay the points. This is a detail often required, and the level of detail regardless of the type of case. The nice thing about probable cause affidavits is that you can use and include experience with other cases, training, and experts from other agencies or your own when including information. This agent includes the phrase, "based on my training and experience." They were able to show that this was not a simple amusement device. The next paragraph also contains a very interesting record in the investigation. It shows that 1110 and 1112 Beach Drive, the location of this establishment, is owned by Norino Properties. If you recall from the previous slide, in the interview of the employee, he names Zorzit as the owner of Norino Construction, a similar named entity. A simple records check with the State Corporation Commission or licensing agency shows that Zorzit or a close associate is likely the owner of the related firm also. While this could have been included as well as the address on the documents, it doesn't necessarily need to be. That is a reasonable inference that they are controlled by the same person. The section on financial and banking information is critical to show the flow of funds and the illegal profitability of this enterprise. It also explains how the probable cause for the seizure of the bank warrants is tied together, as was mentioned in the first paragraph. Here, the agent summarizes the total forfeited funds from the gambling machines seized by Baltimore County Police. Since 2003, it's nearly $10,000. The agent also makes some calculations based on likely proceeds from the other gambling machines that are known to be licensed by Nick's Amusements. If you average the proceeds per week for each slot machine and calculate the proceeds per week, you can make a reasonable statement about the illicit earning potential. In this case, it is over $4.5 million for 4 years, and who knows how long this gambling operation has actually been going on, likely much longer. Bank deposits are critical to show the accounts from which the cash was deposited. These are the accounts that the agent is asking to seize, based on the fact that the illicit cash deposits were made into these accounts. The chart is a helpful way to present this information in a clear, concise, and understandable manner. According to the Internal Revenue Service's manual, the section on bank deposits, the bank deposit method of proof proves income and utilizes bank account records to establish a subject's understatement of taxable income. Where there is no or insufficient direct evidence of income and/or expenses, the government can still make its investigation indirectly through the use of circumstantial evidence. The theory behind the bank deposits method of proof is simple. There are only three things a person can do with money once it's been received. They can spend it, deposit it, or put it under a mattress. Accounting for these three areas considers all funds available to the subject. If non-income sources are eliminated, the remaining currency expenditures, deposits, and increases in cash on hand will equal corrected gross income. The bank deposits method of proof requires the special agent conduct a thorough analysis of deposits and canceled checks, which relates to all bank accounts which are owned or controlled by the subject. Additionally, the subject's currency expenditures must be documented thoroughly. By stating the facts that deposits were often made by third-party checks made out to one company's name, but then actually deposited into a different company's name account, this is the conclusion that shows that there has been a deviation from the normal course of business. This is based on the accounting principle where the segregation of funds and the ability to trace transactions and reconcile the accounts are very important. This is called commingling and is often used by money launderers and other criminals to obfuscate the trail of funds. It allows them to disguise the tainted funds by depositing them with other funds or other legitimate funds in an effort to make it all appear legit. The Affiant has included 4 years of tax return information on the businesses owned or controlled by Zorzit. This is important because in many cases you want to look beyond just the paper ownership, but the actual beneficial recipient of the profits. For example, some of the companies may be in the name of his wife or children, or he may own only 40% on paper, which is a minority share, but in reality, he truly controls and manages the day-to-day operations of the business. Form 1120 is the IRS form for corporate income tax reporting. Including tax return information for the business entities can be important for a number of reasons. First, it shows the gross receipts, which were the amount of sales and receipts from operations. It also shows other income from additional sources. In this case, it is interesting to show that the net income, which is basically the bottom line, is that these entities took a tax loss for each of the 4 years, as much as nearly $700,000. It makes the IRS and other state tax authorities question why deductions were so high, especially where the businesses could be involved in money laundering or other criminal activity. Between 2003 and 2006, Zorzit purchased 17 properties with funds traceable to the gambling activities. The properties were purchased by Zorzit as associates of Zorzit or businesses that were owned or controlled by him. The cash from the gambling was deposited into the bank accounts of Nick's Amusements, which is controlled by Zorzit, and then transferred into the accounts of Norino Properties, LLC, Norino Properties and Construction, Inc., Norino Management, and other related entities. This is a brief summary of the purchases of these properties, most likely coming from public records regarding the real property transfer. It's important to know, since there's evidence that Zorzit deposited or caused to be deposited these tainted funds into a clean account, which we've previously called commingling. The courts have ruled that there's no general requirement to trace those funds. In one ruling, the court said, courts have held that there is no requirement a substantial portion of commingled funds derived from the criminal activity, so long as there's some evidence of the commingled funds that were originated from criminal activity. See U.S. v. Ward 197 F3D 1076 from the 11th Circuit, 1999. Writing skills are essential in this investigative profession. The most successful agents and investigators are those who can write clearly, articulately, and persuasively, using the facts located in the course of their investigation. The same can be said of successful lawyers and many other professions. Use every opportunity to learn new skills, read many types of written products, especially investigative products, and evaluate and analyze them. It's important to have your work proofread by others because they will often catch things that you won't. Since they don't have the case background, it is helpful because they will be reading it as if they were the judge, likely for the very first time. If it doesn't make sense to them, you probably need to rework it. We call these paper cases for a reason. Not only are they document intensive from an evidentiary perspective, but they are also generally initiated, litigated, tried, or settled through paper products, affidavits, declarations, motions, memorandums, etc. The better you are at putting the words down on paper that make sense and are easy to understand and are factually accurate, the better and more respected you'll be as an investigator. People will remember well-written products, and unfortunately, they'll also remember the poorly written ones. Remember that probable cause is defined by the totality of the facts and circumstances, based in reasonably trustworthy information, and which a person of reasonable caution would believe that an offense has been or is being committed by the person to be arrested, or that contraband or evidence of the crime would be found in a particular place. Probable cause is based upon everyday logic and common sense. The logical inferences that can be drawn from the facts and circumstances by a person of reasonable caution are included in the probable cause determination. The facts and circumstances must be logically make it probable that seizable property or evidence is located in a place, that particular place. Absolute certainty is not required. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is not required, but probability is enough. Ultimately, facts and details are absolutely essential. You must establish the tie-in or nexus to the location, the property to be searched or seized, the person to be arrested, and the crime. Ultimately, a probable cause affidavit is about showing how all of the facts, or many of the facts, are connected. It's about telling a story so the judge to see how it is easy to follow and make it interesting, compelling, factual, and understandable. And that's what makes a probable cause affidavit. So real quick, let's talk about the rest of the story. Search warrants were executed at Zorzit's home in Cockeysville and at Nick's Amusements corporate headquarters on January 29, 2009. 108 boxes of evidence were removed according to the return and inventory that was filed with the court. They included documents, computers, currency, cash receipts, financial information, invoices, customer lists, tax records, and many other information. a civil forfeiture complaint against the 17 properties and the 14 bank accounts connected to the scheme, Nick's Amusements, John Zorzit, and the Norino companies was filed by the U.S. Attorney on January 28, 2009. An amended forfeiture complaint was filed on June 15, 2009. The forfeiture was resolved in March and May of 2010 through a settlement agreement. In November of 2010, Nick's Amusements agreed to a plea deal where the case was settled with a corporate plea to 18 U.S.C. 1957 money laundering. The state of Maryland comptroller also assessed additional taxes due based on the failure to report the illegal proceeds from the gambling, and Zorzit appealed. This is a slide that is an adaptation of the chart that was entered into an exhibit during the civil forfeiture proceedings. I think it's an excellent example of how to simplify a very complex scheme and make it understandable and easily accessible to the judge or the jury. These presentations and charts are very useful in multiple types of proceedings, regardless of the type of case. I've used these same types of flowcharts to describe cases and schemes to grand juries, prosecutors, and even senior leaders in government agencies. It's an effective way to present the information in a way that everyone can understand. My recommendation is to draft these schematics early in your investigation and keep them updated. And if you need to, use additional slides so it doesn't become too crowded or unnecessarily complicated. In this case, you can see how sophisticated the scheme actually was. Nick's Amusements was used to skim cash so the funds would not appear on the books, and that cash was eventually diverted to the Norino real estate business. This was likely done in an attempt to reduce their taxable income. Additionally, Norino rented these properties to the owners of the bar businesses where these slot machines were placed. The rent was then paid for by cash to Norino properties off books. These funds were then used to purchase additional properties. Thanks so much for touring this probable cause affidavit with me. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed putting it together. My goal with this presentation and this course is to show you real-world applications in the use of physical and documentary evidence, especially in complicated fraud, financial, and cybercrime investigations. Hopefully, you can learn, grow, and have some additional resources to work with going forward. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions or comments, please post them to the discussion board and we can continue our conversation. I encourage you to look for and read other search warrants, seizure warrants, and probable cause, criminal complaints, indictments, bills of information, and many other legal documents that you think could be helpful. Please post them if you find them. Thanks for listening, and have a great day.